Okay, so I know this has made its way around the internet. I did want to talk about this. Obviously, the Game Award nominations are out, and on podcasts now, I did a whole video with Jay, with Degenerate Jay, and we predicted a lot of the winners of the categories. We predicted what other people, like the committee, is going to say, not necessarily what we, the people at home that played these games and bought and all that stuff, not what we think. Okay, that's a separate thing. I do want to have like a Game of the Year kind of award show on my own channel. It's going to be, I'm very excited for it. I think it's going to be a really, really cool thing. But I, was perusing the internet as I normally do, daily, hourly, minutely, and I noticed that there's a bit of anger about The Last of Us Part 2, being in so many categories. So I want to talk about it. And if you guys have been around the channel, you know that a couple things. I am respectful. I think, this is my own personal opinion, I'm respectful of people's opinions on things. So if you disagree, totally cool. If you agree, totally cool. If you're somewhere in the middle, totally cool. As long as you're not hurting me, as long as you're not hurting other people, generally fine, right? And with The Last of Us Part 2, that was a big test of that because I liked a lot of things, a lot. And honestly, I will say, I think time has been kinder to The Last of Us Part 2 than other things, where I think it's gotten, in my mind, I have a more positive view of it over time. And, okay, again, you cannot agree with me. That's totally cool. There are still major things, the major story decisions, a couple of them, 2 or 3, that are big problems that I still disagree with, that I still understand why people are mad, and I'm mad. And I was mad back then. I'm still mad now, okay? But The Last of Us Part 2 is a big example of, some people loved it. Some people thought it was the greatest game of all time. Some people despised it. Some people boycotted it. All good to me, okay? I want to make that very clear, before we get too far into it, because I know there could be people on either side. And I want to stop the dislikes on the video from coming early, okay? Look, the game, I do think, deserves a lot of those nominations. And another thing here, too, is you got to remember what you're dealing with. This is not your game, and I don't mean that like in a negative way. It's not your Game of the Year awards. It's not my Game of the Year awards. When Jeff Keighley did like the Spike Game Awards show, this was literally 10, 12 years ago. I would do my own, with my cousin, I would do my own Game of the Year awards show. We would both make categories, we would pick the nominations, and we would both pick the games that we thought won it, and we would do it with each other. It was fun. It was revolutionary before its time, to be quite honest with you. And again, those are ours, and these are Jeff Keighley's, and like the board of directors, or whoever the heck they are, right? I think we should be used to this. That's the first thing I'll say. When these things come out, when the Game Awards comes out, we always see this. There are a handful of games that pretty much take up every single category. When you talk about Best Actor, that normally connects to if it's got a good story, or if it's got good gameplay, or and now they call it like narrative, stuff like that. Game of the Year. These are all categories where they fit in really well, okay? Now, The Last of Us isn't nominated for everything, to be fair. It's not even nominated, I would say, for every category that it could have been part of, okay? And there's plenty of other categories that it's not in. So, again, 2 things. Number 1, this is just how it is. I mean, you go back to every year, there's always a 5 to 8 games that populate a very fair amount. And this is just this. There's like the DICE Game Awards too, right, which is pretty much the same thing. And they do a lot of the same games win that as well. It's you know what I mean? It's just kind of how it is. I'm not really all that upset. I think what's more important is if it's going to win. That's the second part of this. That's kind of what I want to focus on next, is if they win it all. So I've seen people upset that it's been nominated for so much, and I think the general idea, and we did say this in our predictions things too, this is going to be interesting because this is going to decide, I think, a lot of public opinion on where these voters stand. So remember, there's like a board of people across the gaming industry that vote on these things. Okay, Jeff Keighley himself actually doesn't vote. So when Last of Us Part 2 came out, again, opinions aside, it was split. There were people that loved it, hated it, thought it was okay, overrated, underrated, all of them. There's a lot of them, okay? And I think what you saw, not that any of those are wrong, because they're all opinionated, but what was interesting, that got the conspiracy going in people, that the gaming press is in line with the gaming industry itself, which I do think is true. In fact, I think I talked about that. I do think that's true. I don't think it's true in the way people say. I don't think they're paid for reviews. I do not believe that. There's never been evidence of that either. So it's tough to make that point. I don't think the people that review these games are paid off basically to say nice things. But I think it's more of a atmosphere with everybody that they all want to be liked, they all want to be respected. You know what I mean? Now, not everybody, because there are, the game publishers and developers blacklist loads of people, right? Even on YouTube, they blacklist loads of people. But I think generally that's where that conspiracy, I think, really hit a new level. I just don't agree with the specific reasoning they were saying, but to their credit, this is where we will see it. Truly, this is where we'll see it, because when you're looking at these games, okay, when you look at Game of the Year, Best Direction, best, all this different stuff, any category Last of Us is part of, you have to, you're making it based off of your own, I guess, choice, right? These people that are voting, they're making it based off of their own. But this, I think, is really going to signal to people how much they care about the controversy, because if there's, and I don't know what the criteria is. I'm sure Jeff Keighley has, okay, here's why you're making these votes. And I don't know if part of it is make the vote based off of only you or partially you and partially what the gaming industry has said, right? Because if you do stuff like that, then a game like Animal Crossing gets big boost, because not only is it personal to some people, but you look at the tens of millions that played that game, it's important. You look at what Fall Guys did for like 2 months. That was important. You look at Among Us. My God, right? The scope of that game. Maybe you didn't even play it, but I've played Among Us quite a bit, okay? But when you look at it and you're voting, say you didn't even play Among Us. Now, again, I don't know the requirements. Maybe you needed to have played Among Us, but even if you didn't, and you look at those categories, you look at all the nominees for that category, how do you not pick? Let's just give that example, right? How do you not pick Among Us, right? Truly, because your favorite may be Call of Duty or whatever, but you look at the scope of it in terms of the gaming industry. How do you not pick it? And again, like when I do my Game of the Year awards, it's probably going to be very personal. It's going to be mine. I don't really, I'm not taking into consideration, they said that they hated this game, or they said they loved this game, so I need to get, no, it's mine. When you do the Game Awards, it's much broader. It's to people, there's tens of millions of people watching this thing. It's to everybody. So that's where I think I agree. Where when you look at The Last of Us Part 2, should it have been nominated for all these categories? I think so. Because I think, obviously, again, it's all subjective. It's all, different people's opinions. But, it did do really good things in a lot of different areas. And even the things that maybe some people didn't agree with, others did. So again, let's say like a best story, which again, they don't call it that. I think they call it best narrative. You may have hated it. I may have disagreed with a lot of the major decisions. But okay, it was bold and it worked for some people. So, and you could argue that if it did work on you, it would be best story. So I could see how it's nominated. Again, where I differ from, so like I'm on board with that, and maybe that disagrees with where you guys are coming from, and that's totally cool. But where I am in agreement is, on all of this, is we'll have to see how the votes go. If Last of Us wins 90% of the categories it's in, that's weird. That's weird because, again, you look at the competitors and you even look at it itself, and it's like, yeah, and I'm not saying, by the way, because you could argue this is very bold, right? Putting this in all these categories and what the game did, whether or not you agree or disagree, it was bold. That's probably the best way of saying it, right? Because some people despised it, some people loved it. There's really no better definition of making like a bold choice. But again, if it doesn't work with everybody, and I'm not saying don't be bold in your games, don't be bold in your movies, but if it's so polarizing to however much a percentage of people, now we don't know the percentage, that is an issue. It could be a very loud minority of people. It could be a very vocal minority where it's like 5% and 95% loved it. It could be, because we don't know. We really don't know. But even if there's a big split, how do you vote it? How do you vote it? Because say a game like Final Fantasy VII or Doom or Animal Crossing, these games have almost, especially Animal Crossing, they have universal praise. Everybody, likes it. Now, is it the best at what the category is? Well, that obviously you're gonna have to decide that in each category. Say it's best like story, okay? And there's a couple of them that are in contention, and The Last of Us is also in contention. I think you got to look at it and say, all right, well, they're all really good. But The Last of Us was only really good to some people, not to everybody. whereas blank game seemed to be really good across the board. Do you know what I mean? I get it because it's bold and maybe that gives it like brownie points with them. You know what I mean? It's tough. I feel for Jeff Keighley. I think he does an amazing, amazing job. But these kind of things, they do get people talking. They get people talking in a very negative direction sometimes. And I understand it. And they kind of put themselves in that situation, actually in a couple different ways. I get it. It's tough. It's a really, really tough thing. We'll have to see how the voting actually goes. We'll have to see kind of what happens afterwards. So the thing that will make me, I think, most upset, not even if it wins everything, because here's probably what happens next. If Last of Us like sweeps everything, you'll see a lot of people, I assume, online attacking those that didn't like it, saying, ha, see, you all overreacted, or ha, see, nobody actually cares what you think. The majority or these people voted on it. And in reality, and I probably will make videos on that, that's the stupid thing. That doesn't make any sense. That's not even what the Game Awards is about, right? So that I will give you guys that. I would put money on that. That is my prediction for what would happen afterwards. We'll have to see if we get to that point, though. So let me know, guys, in the comments below. What do you think? Are you on board with it being nominated? What are your thoughts on the voting? All that stuff. Let me know. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. I do a brand new video on this channel every single day, and so I hope to see you guys for tomorrow's video.